Hatch RU-1 has been recently closed.
It might have something to do with the power being redirected to RU-6. Or it could be something else.
Observation is the most frustrating game I've played in 2021, and probably the most frustrating game I've played since 2013's Colonial Marines. Now, I'll admit that's a bit of a harsh comparison. Colonial Marines was a lazy rush job that squandered the source material. Observation isn't lazy or rushed by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it does squander a great idea. Observation came out in 2019 for PC and PS4, and then a year later for Xbox One. It was created by NoCode, a small studio co-founded by John McKellen, who was the lead UI designer on Alien Isolation. A number of other people who also worked on Alien Isolation were involved in Observation's creation, including Keziah Burrows, who played Amanda Ripley. And this is one of the main reasons I was so excited to play it. Alien Isolation is one of my favourite games of all time, and a chance to play something new from the people who made it was too good to pass up. The other reason it piqued my interest is that it's a puzzle game, and not just a game that includes puzzles, but one where they make up the bulk of the gameplay. Given its pedigree and the fact that it's a sci-fi thriller set in space, it might sound like a spiritual successor to Alien Isolation. But other than the setting and having a story that involves mystery, Observation doesn't share much in common. Instead, it's an entirely unique experience told from an equally unique perspective. Considering how small the team who created it was, it's an incredibly impressive achievement. I'm not just talking about the visuals either. The story and how it's told is expertly handled, and you're constantly kept guessing right until the end. So in this review, I want to explain how Observation squanders an excellent idea, what makes it such a frustrating game to play, and in spite of this, why it comes very close to being one of the best sci-fi thrillers I've ever played. One of the key influences for Observation was an article written about the 1979 Alien film. It viewed the events from the perspective of the alien and suggested the idea that maybe the alien wasn't actually the villain. Consider this. The alien is born into a hostile environment, is hunted immediately, and is essentially a child. Its actions are merely instinctive, feeding when it needs to and defending itself when necessary. John McKellen thought that this shift in viewpoint was fascinating and wanted to apply it to HAL from 2001: A Space Odyssey, and that's basically the premise of Observation. You play as Sam, an artificial intelligence responsible for the operation and maintenance of a space station. The setup is great. You wake up aboard the station along with a single crew member, Emma. Neither of you has any understanding of where you are or how you got there. Your main objective is to help Emma get the station back online, and in the process you discover the reasons behind the who, what, when, where, and eventually the why. As the station's artificial intelligence, you essentially are the station, and predominantly view the world through a network of cameras. These cameras have fixed positions and therefore have a very limited field of view. Each section of the station has 2 to 3 of them, but you never get a perfect view of everything. You can also possess spheres, which let you move around freely, as well as being able to exit the station. They're intentionally clunky and disorienting to use though, and they can't access every area. So for the most part, you view everything through a very narrow perspective, which provides a tangible feeling of claustrophobia. As Sam, what you can do is limited to the available systems on the station. As the game progresses, more of these become available as you bring them online or repair them. On one hand, this gives you the illusion that you're in control of everything, as you can oversee the entire station and manipulate its systems. But at the same time, you're also very disconnected, because to action anything, you have to interact with each system's bespoke interface. These essentially act as a middleman between you and what you need to get done. Most of the tasks you're given have logical solutions, but occasionally you'll be able to make decisions based on personal preference. This suggests that Sam is possibly sentient, or is becoming sentient. All of this is set against a backdrop of a mystery that unfolds as you unlock new areas and learn more about what's going on and your role in it. The story and characters are excellent, and the only thing holding it back is some stiff facial animations. Even still, I was thoroughly invested in unraveling the secrets of the station, and from a pure story standpoint, I get why it reviewed so well. Where it falls apart for me is the puzzles. Like I said earlier, the promise of a game that centers around problem solving is totally my jam. And yeah, most of the time if you're not actively working on solving something, you're searching for useful information that will provide the answers later on. Now, this isn't an inherently bad way to structure a game. There are plenty of great titles that do exactly that. My issue is that these aren't really puzzles. They're more like simple tasks presented with deliberately abstruse UI and little to no instructions. Very few of them have complex patterns to figure out or codes to decipher. They usually just boil down to trial and error, or scanning literally every surface in a room to find the missing piece of information you need. The instructions you do get are incredibly vague. One of the tasks, for instance, asks you to find a crew member in a section of the station. This is easy enough, but you're not told what you're supposed to do afterwards. Without any guidance, your only option is to dig through the various system menus and search the entire station from every camera angle until you stumble across the answer. This is a reoccurring problem throughout Observation. Simple tasks are meant to be as unintuitive as possible, and this completely destroyed my sense of immersion. It's hard to feel like a hyper-intelligent AI when you can't even figure out how to complete basic tasks like reporting your findings. When you do finally figure out the solution, the payoff is generally one of frustration. You realize, had you known what to do in the first place, you could have completed the task in about 10 seconds, and not the 30 minutes you just wasted reading every fucking post-it note on every wall. There are a couple of puzzles where you can tell that there probably is a clever pattern or sequence to decipher, but the effort involved to figure it out is usually way higher than just trying every possible combination. And this to me is indicative of terrible design. You should want to figure things out, not balk at the task at hand and reach for the easy cop-out solution. Like, in one puzzle, you have to disable modules on a circuit board. The only hint you're given as to which modules belong to which circuit is a cheat sheet with the circuit numbers in their code names. I'm sure there's a logical way to find the corresponding numbers for each module, but why bother when it's faster to just try each number until you get it right? This approach to puzzle design has another major flaw, which is that there's very little sense of achievement. A good puzzle should have a eureka moment, where you discover the solution and feel good about being clever for figuring it out. You don't get that satisfaction from trial and error because it's simply a process of elimination. Success is inevitable, it's not rewarding. When you figure something out in Observation, it's like, well, that was a pain in the ass. Unlike Alien Isolation, where the UI was deliberately designed to be cumbersome to enhance the tension, the clunky interfaces and puzzle design in Observation just drag the pacing down to an unbearable crawl. There's no penalty for taking ages or failing at any of these tasks either, so it doesn't feel like there's anything at stake. Sometimes Emma will tell you that you need to hurry, but in reality you can take as long as you like, and it has no impact on the ensuing events. To illustrate the issues with Observation's puzzles, I want to show you a puzzle from Uncharted 4. This is reasonably early in the game, and it's not very difficult, but it still requires some problem solving, and most importantly, it feels satisfying to complete. You can see that the tools for manipulating the device are clearly marked with icons. The goal is made clear too. One of the symbols is already highlighted, which hints at the solution. The complete solution is actually partially written in Nate's journal, albeit with a question mark around the final piece of the puzzle. Additionally, Sam points out various points of interest, which act as further hints about how to solve it. Although the final solution isn't given away, the challenge here isn't figuring out what the puzzle looks like when it's complete or how to use the device. The challenge comes from figuring out how to get the three symbols to align with the corresponding light source. It seems pretty easy, and when you have all the information the game gives you about how to solve it, it is, but imagine if you removed the various hints. So there were no icons to let you know what you can and can't interact with, no journal that shows you how to order the symbols, no light sources hinting at where the symbols go, and no Sam to help guide you. I reckon you could figure out how to spin the symbols without too much trouble, but finding the correct order and even where the symbols are supposed to go would take forever. This is what the puzzles are like in Observation, and they fail because the goal and the rules about what you can and can't do aren't always clear. The focus is on figuring out what you're supposed to do, rather than figuring out how to do it. This, in my opinion, is a very backwards way to design puzzles. They're designed to waste your time, and they rob you of the satisfaction of solving a problem with your smarts. Game Maker's Toolkit did an excellent video that talks about what makes a good puzzle. It basically describes my exact thoughts on the topic, except that it's explained more clearly and with better examples. If you're thinking about picking up this game, I strongly recommend checking out that video, because if you agree with the points being made in it, then it's pretty safe to assume that you'll find the puzzles just as frustrating as I did. Now, with all of that said, not all of them are laborious, and as you become more knowledgeable of the station and its various systems, the pace eventually does pick up. But as an experience where most of it is centered around problem solving, this game would have been infinitely better if it made you feel clever for doing so. If it hadn't been for one of the most interesting mysteries I've experienced in a game, I would have turned this off well before the halfway mark.
I am here.
It's hard to talk about the story in any detail without giving too much away. What I can say is that it's clever, thought-provoking, and asks some pretty existential questions. Like a lot of sci-fi, it's open to interpretation, but it's not completely nebulous. It reminds me a little bit of Arrival or even Interstellar. If you like neatly explained endings, then this is likely to give you the shits. However, if you enjoy trying to glean a deeper meaning from an ambiguous plot, then I suggest finding someone else to play it with so you can both geek out together, as there's plenty to unpack here. I think the most frustrating thing is that for as well conceived and as smart as I think the story is, the gameplay constantly undermines it by reminding you what a dumbass you are. Observation had the potential to be a cleverly cohesive experience. Instead, it's a game of two halves, where one half is well thought out and intriguing, and the other half never quite comes together. The title suggests the careful monitoring of something, and maybe even a dual meaning. Unfortunately, I think it's much more literal than that. Most of the game is spent observing things, but it's things like post-it notes and laptops and padded boxes and electrical cables and bits of paper and more laptops. So while observation is technically an accurate description of the game, I think a more appropriate title would have been looking at shit, because that's what you'll spend most of your time doing. There is a great story here, a really great one if you ask me, and as sci-fi thrillers go, it's original and it keeps you guessing the whole way through. But the path to get to the end credits is so tedious at times that I can't see many people making it there. Now, after spending most of this video telling you how bad certain aspects are, this might come as a surprise. I still think it's a good game. Maybe not the best sci-fi thriller ever, but it came pretty damn close, and with a different approach to its puzzle design, it could have been incredible. I say this a lot, but observation really isn't for everyone. I think there will be some people that it resonates with strongly, and if you like sci-fi thrillers and have a lot of patience, and I mean a lot of patience, then this is worth checking out. If you enjoyed this video, a like is always appreciated, and of course a dislike will let me know that I need to improve. If you're new around here, hit that subscribe button and the bell to be notified when new videos go live. And if you want to support the channel and find out more about how I make these videos, head on over to the Patreon page. Otherwise, thanks for your time.